I'm not going to cry telling you this story. I need you to know that up front. Not because I don't feel it. I feel every single word of it. But I already did my crying. I did it in the bathroom with the tap running so nobody could hear me. And then I washed my face, and then I was done. What I'm giving you now is the other side of that, the clear side. The part where I knew exactly what I was doing, and I did it anyway quietly, with a full cup of coffee and a steady hand. My name is Naomi. I am 34 years old, and for 6 years, I was married to a man named Derek. Derek was the kind of man who made a good first impression on everyone. Good looking in that easy, comfortable way, the kind of white man who could walk into any room and immediately belong to it. He remembered everybody's birthday. He tipped well. He laughed at the right moments at dinner parties and knew when to pass the bottle. People loved Derek. Women thought he was charming, and men thought he was solid. His mother thought the sun rose just to have something to shine on him. I thought he was home. That was the word I used to use back in the beginning. Not love. I mean, yes, love, but more than that. Home. Like when you walk through the front door and your whole body exhales. That's what Derek felt like to me for the first 2 years. Maybe 3. After that, I don't know when it changed. It's like asking when a room got cold. You don't notice until you're already shivering. We had a good life on paper, a house, my house actually, which matters later, 2 cars, a routine that worked. He traveled for his consulting firm a few days a month, and I worked from home as a project manager. We had date nights on Fridays when he was in town. We had friends, mostly his friends if I'm honest, mostly people from his world. Tyler, who was Derek's best friend since college, and his wife Jen. And then there were the work people, the colleagues. That's how I knew Cassie. I met her at a holiday party Derek's firm threw at some rented-out rooftop in December. She was 29, blonde, easy in the way that some women just are. The kind of easy that looks effortless but probably took years to perform. She came right up to me, not the other way around, and she held my hand in both of hers and looked me dead in the eye and said, "He talks about you constantly. You're all he talks about, honestly. You must know how much he loves you." I remember thinking she seemed genuine. I remember thinking she had kind eyes. I believed her. That was the first thing I got wrong. Something shifted in February. I couldn't name it then. It wasn't one thing. It was the accumulation of small, almost invisible adjustments. The way Derek started placing his phone face down on the counter when he came home. The way he laughed differently on certain calls, lighter, brighter. A laugh I didn't recognize as his. The way he started showering as soon as he got home from the office, even on days when he hadn't mentioned going to the gym. None of it was proof of anything. It was just weather. Pressure changing in the atmosphere before you know what kind of storm is coming. We had dinner with Tyler and Jen in March. Nothing special. Tyler's birthday, a restaurant we'd all been to a dozen times. And at some point during the main course, Derek made a joke about a work trip coming up. And I looked over at Tyler in that half second before anyone laughed, and Tyler's face did something. Not guilt exactly, something quieter than guilt. Something more like the face of a man choosing not to speak. I filed it away and didn't touch it. Then came the night in April. Derek was in the shower and his phone lit up on the kitchen counter. I wasn't looking for it. I was standing right there putting away dishes, and the screen just illuminated. I didn't pick it up. I didn't unlock it. I just read the preview text, the top of a message that sat on his lock screen like it had every right to be there. The sender's name was Cassie. The message said, "Last night was everything. I keep thinking about what you said." I stood there for a moment. I looked at the message. Then I looked away. I filled the kettle. I made a cup of tea. I heard Derek finish his shower, heard the bathroom door open, heard him come into the kitchen behind me, and I turned around and smiled and asked him if he wanted anything before bed. He said no. He kissed my cheek. He went to watch television. I sat with my tea at the kitchen table and I made a decision. I was not going to panic. I was not going to confront him with one text message I wasn't even supposed to see. I was going to wait. I was going to watch. And I was going to be smarter than this situation thought I was, because here is what I have learned about silence. People mistake it for ignorance. They think if you're not reacting, you must not know. They never consider that sometimes silence is the only move that leaves you any power at all. It was a Tuesday in May when I found everything. Derek had left his laptop open on the dining room table when he ran out for a last-minute errand. He'd forgotten something at the office. He was only going to be 20 minutes. He left his email open. I sat down at the table. I looked at the screen. And then, with the same steadiness I'd been practicing since April, I started reading. They had a separate email thread. Not his work account, a personal one he'd set up, a Gmail address with a name I'd never heard. He must have forgotten to log out of it, or maybe he trusted that I would never check. Maybe he just got careless. People get careless when they feel safe. I read everything. I read 8 months of it. I read the messages from September, when it started. Casual at first, professional, and then something that curled at the edges of professional without quite crossing the line. I read October when it crossed the line. I read November when they started making plans, coordinating around my schedule, around the things I told Derek I was doing that week. I read December. I read it twice. Because December was when Cassie held my hand at that party and told me Derek talked about me constantly. I found one message that I have not been able to stop thinking about since. Derek had written to her in late January after she'd apparently asked him whether I suspected anything. He wrote, "She doesn't notice anything. You know how she is. She's always in her own world. She trusts me completely." That's the thing about Naomi. She'd never think to check. She'd never think to check. Not that he had betrayed me. Not the affair, not the 8 months, not Cassie's hand in both of mine at a Christmas party telling me I was loved. What I could not stop sitting with was that line, that he had counted on me, that my trust, the thing I had given him freely, completely, as a foundation of what I thought we were, had been converted in his mind into a strategic advantage, into a reason he could keep going. He had looked at my love and seen a loophole. I kept reading. Tyler had known since October. There were messages referencing him by name. Derek mentioning that Tyler had told him to just be cool, don't blow it up over something that doesn't have to mean anything. Tyler, who'd sat across from me at that birthday dinner in March and chosen his face carefully. And then there was Donna. Derek's mother had sent Cassie a message, directly her own email address, asking how they were doing and whether they had talked about next steps. Donna, who had called me daughter at every Christmas, who had hugged me at the airport when Derek and I got back from our honeymoon, who had sent me a card when my grandmother died, that said, "You are part of this family always." Donna had known too. I sat with that for a long time. Then I closed the laptop, exactly as Derek had left it. I went to the bathroom and I looked at myself in the mirror for a while. I don't know how long, and I made the second decision, the one that came after the first. I had decided to watch. Now I decided how this was going to end. Not with a confrontation in the kitchen, not with screaming, not with throwing things, not with me giving any of these people the image of a woman falling apart. They had already decided what I was worth. I was not going to perform grief for their benefit. I was going to be methodical. I was going to be quiet. And when I left, I was going to leave nothing behind that I needed. Over the next 3 weeks, I moved in total silence. I contacted a divorce attorney. A woman brilliant referred to me by a colleague I trusted. I met with her on a Thursday afternoon when Derek thought I was at a dental appointment. She laid out everything clearly. The house was mine. I had purchased it before our marriage. It remained in my name. I had maintained it with my income throughout. Derek had no claim on it. What we would need to divide was minimal. She told me I was in a better position than most of the women she saw. I moved my savings to a private account. It was my money. Money I had earned, money I had saved carefully before and during the marriage. I photographed every financial document that had my name on it. I made a list of everything that mattered to me in the house and began, slowly, moving it to my sister's apartment in small increments. A few things each week, nothing dramatic, nothing Derek would notice. Books, photographs, my grandmother's earrings, the things that couldn't be replaced. Derek came home every evening during those 3 weeks, and I cooked dinner, and we talked about his day, and I smiled at the right moments. I asked about his clients. I laughed at his stories. I was a perfect portrait of a woman who suspects nothing. One evening, he stepped outside to take a call from Cassie while I was right there in the living room. He said it was work. He walked out onto the back porch, and I watched him through the glass door for a moment. His posture, the way he tilted his head when he talked to her, the laugh I didn't recognize. And then I turned back to the television and turned up the volume slightly and finished my glass of wine. His mother called that week to check in, as she did every few weeks, and I talked to her for 20 minutes. She asked how Derek was doing. She asked if we had any trips planned for the summer. I was warm and easy and completely present. When I hung up, I sat very still for a moment and I thought, I will never speak to you again. And then I got up and started making dinner. I sent one message to Tyler, not an accusation, not a confrontation, just 11 words. When you're ready to look me in the eye, you know my number. Then I blocked him. The Sunday before I left, Donna hosted a family dinner. I went. I brought flowers, white tulips, her favorite. I hugged everyone. I sat at the table for 3 hours. I engaged in every conversation, laughed at every appropriate moment, helped clear the plates. I gave Derek's family one last portrait of me at my best, gracious, warm, intelligent, fully present. I wanted that to be the last image they had. I wanted them to have to sit with it. It was a Tuesday. Derek left for the office at 8:15, same as always. I stood at the kitchen window and watched his car back out of the driveway and disappear around the corner. I stayed at the window for a moment after he was gone. The street was quiet. A neighbor was walking a dog. Somewhere down the block, a lawnmower started up. I made coffee. I drank it standing at the counter, slowly, without rushing anything. There was nothing left to rush. My sister arrived at 9. We didn't need a moving truck. I had been so methodical over the previous weeks that what remained was only 2 bags, both already packed and standing near the front door. We loaded them into her car in 2 trips. I walked back through the house one time, not for sentiment, just to make sure I had left what I meant to leave and taken what I meant to take. I had left one thing on the kitchen counter, deliberately, the divorce papers already prepared by my attorney with a post-it note on top. The note said, "You said I'd never think to check. I want you to spend the rest of your life knowing how wrong you were." I didn't sign it. He would know my handwriting. My sister waited by the car. I locked the front door, the house that had always been mine, and I put the key in my bag and I walked down the front steps. Derek called at 9:47, then at 9:51, then again at 10:03. I sat in the passenger seat of my sister's car and I watched his name light up my screen 3 times. I didn't answer. There was nothing he could say that I needed to hear. He needed to talk. I understood that. He needed to explain or apologize or find some version of events that he could live with. But I had been ready to have that conversation for 5 months. I had waited and watched and given him every opportunity to choose differently. That window had not just closed. I had locked it from the outside and taken the key. My sister didn't say anything. She just drove. The radio was on low, something quiet, something I didn't know the name of. The light on the highway was sharp and early. I watched the city thin out on either side of us, and I felt something that I can only describe as precision. Not happiness, right? Not yet. Not relief quite, or for just a feeling of being exactly on time, of having done exactly what I set out to do, in the exact order I had planned it, without losing a single piece of myself in the process. People ask me if I regret not confronting him sooner, if I regret the 3 weeks I spent sitting across from him at dinner, talking about his day like everything was fine. I don't. Because confronting him in that kitchen in April with one text message and a racing heartbeat would have handed him control of the narrative. He would have explained it. He would have minimized it. He would have turned it into something we were working through together, on his terms, on his timeline. And I would have been the woman who suspected and asked and was reassured and stayed. I've seen that story. I wasn't going to be in it. What I did instead was find out the full truth, secure everything I was entitled to, and leave in a way that required no performance, no breakdown, no scene. I left the way I had lived inside that marriage for the last 2 years of it, quietly and completely on my own. Derek called 11 times that day. I never answered. His mother sent a text message 3 days later. I read it once. Then I deleted it. Cassie sent me a message on Instagram. I don't know how she found me, but she found me. And it said that she was sorry, that she hoped I understood, that she and Derek hadn't meant for any of it to happen this way. I looked at it for a long time. Then I archived it without responding. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. The people who do it to you are always waiting for your reaction. They want to see what you do. They want the explosion or the tears or the forgiveness. They want something that puts them back at the center of the story. And the most disorienting thing you can do, the thing that will stay with them far longer than any confrontation, is simply to not give it to them. Derek told her I'd never think to check. I thought about that every day for 3 weeks while I was quietly, carefully, systematically taking everything I needed and walking out the door. I didn't cry when I left. I had already grieved the man I thought he was. That grief was real, and I did it privately, and it was mine. What I did on that Tuesday morning was not grief. That was just me finishing the paperwork.